what I'm doing here is I'm just going over the details of this Wolverine sketch that I did up earlier. In this segment, all we're going to do is focus on just adding anatomy and finding some details. If we have enough time, I'll go ahead and do some rendering. So if you guys like comic book style art and you want to learn how to render details and stuff like that, this might be a good video for you. So stay tuned. Here we go. And please forgive the moments of, or the pauses. It's really, really tough to talk and sketch at the same time. I'll try, but can't promise you anything. So one of the things about sketching or any kind of creative art is you want to be able to get into the zone. Basically, the zone is a point where you kind of let go of everything on the outside world and you're just kind of in the art. You become part of this art. You get into this flow state and you lose all track of time and reality. It's a really cool state. You've probably, I would imagine that if you're drawing or if you've even ridden a bike or driven a car, you've gotten into this state before. It's when your body's on autopilot. Anyway, that's the zone I like to get into when I'm drawing, and it's really difficult when you're consciously narrating. So here we go. All I'm doing is trying to capture his facial expressions. I drew in a entire body earlier. I don't know if you can see it. I've erased it all. Generally, that's what I'll do. I'll do kind of a gesture sketch, an underdrawing, and then I'll go ahead and erase it, and I'll come back and redraw it with cleaner lines. Although this one, I'm going to keep a little bit sketchy just so you guys can see the whole process. So what I'm imagining is, he's kind of hunched over. He's in a battle-ready position, and his right, our left, arm is kind of pulled back. So this would be kind of a foreshortened arm. And then when you do a foreshortened arm, that means you're not going to see too much of the actual arm, right? So I'm going to have kind of a silhouette of an arm back here. And what I'll do, more than likely, is I'll probably shade in this whole entire half and then leave this one open. So I'll keep the light over here on this side, and then further away from the light would be the shadows. So here we go. So what you want to do when you're doing something like this is you want to capture all the main elements. So in this case, it would be his shoulder pads, his mask, the shape of his head. You want to get his anatomy in. So we know that his chest is here, and then it comes up, you got this rib cage, and this rib cage is pulling backwards. So what I mean by that is I have him hunched and leaning forward. So that means his upper body is closer to the camera than his pelvis, right? Because he's leaning over towards us. So this pelvis is going to appear kind of pulled back. And then what we're going to do is we're going to draw in a couple of legs. So one leg I'm going to have going out this way. And then the other leg I'll have going in this direction. Now, with his arms, I'm trying to keep them very simplified. So I drew kind of a round spherical shape for a shoulder. And then come back over here, drawing in the basic shapes of his arm. Now, imagining that from here to the elbow, right, is the upper arm, and then from this elbow to the wrist is his lower arm. So I've already got that in my imagination. So what I would do at this point is just trying to find the shapes and adjust them accordingly to his arm positioning. So here we have the wrist. So when you have the wrist, you want to draw the shape of a hand. So when you look at your hand, you have kind of a shape that goes across like this, like this, like this, but then you have another element, which is your thumb, which pops out, right? And your wrist is on the swivel, right? It goes basically left, right, up, down, and it twists. But when it twists, your whole arm twists. So keep that in mind when you're drawing. Imagine, what would be the most dynamic position for his hand to be in, and keeping in mind that Wolverine has these claws that kind of extend, and you don't want to make the claws too short, but you don't want to make them too long. Although making them a little bit longer, it adds a lot of effect. But then you have the peanut gallery who's going to say, hey, those claws are too long, and yeah. Anyway, everyone wants to throw in their opinion. Personally, I like extra long claws because I just think they look really badass. Okay, so I got this arm penciled in. Now I'm going to pull this arm back, and I'm going to try and keep it on par with this hand here. So imagining that the elbows are both pulled back around the same distance. So what that means is I'm going to make a couple adjustments here. And I might be doing this off and on throughout the whole sketch, so bear with me. These are the little tedious factors when you're drawing, you're doing any type of foreshortening. There's always adjustments to be made. Okay, and I'm not using any reference. These days I rarely use reference, and that could be a good thing or a bad thing. A lot of times I'll look at my art after it's finished, and then I'll look at reference afterwards, or I'll see a photo or whatever that resembles the pose, and I'll be, a lot of times I'm happy with it, but a lot of times I'll be a little bit critical on myself, and I would just notice the things I could have done differently. So if you're a beginner or even intermediate, heck, I don't care who you are, you should probably use reference most of the time. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm just trying to lock everything in and get all these shapes where I want them so that I can form a solid looking character. And what I mean by that is I want to add weight to this character, right? So before you can add any weight, you have to have some balance. We know that his head is here, which means if you draw a line straight down, we want to have a foot somewhere around here, like maybe his heel. Hopefully you can see this. Yeah. So when you're thinking about your character's legs, you want to think about balance. You want to think about the weight of the character, which leg is holding on to most of the weight. You want to think about, what's his next move. So in my opinion, being that this his left arm is closer to us, this one's pulled back, I'm imagining that if he were to attack, he would probably strike with this backhand, right? Because this one's already forward, so he'd probably come back with this. So with that in mind, I'm imagining that this body is twisted backwards, kind of wound up, and then he can just swivel over here and swing, kind of hard to explain, but trust me, I put some thought into this. All right, so with this leg here, I'm trying to, it's a tough one because Wolverine is kind of a short and stout character, and you don't want to make the legs too long. Anyway, I'm just going to go with this. And I don't like this arm over here, so let's go ahead and erase it. I'm going to pull this arm this way. And it's a tough call. I'm going to come back to it. A lot of times what I'll do is if I'm struggling with a certain area and I don't feel like looking up reference, I'll just start drawing on something else, working on it, and I'll come back and see if I can find the solution. Drawing is kind of like a math equation. You're constantly trying to find different solutions and different variables and things that work out, different formulas, and you don't want to get stuck in a rut of spending too much time problem solving, because then you lose the momentum and the energy that you need to draw the actual sketch. All right, so I've got the whole character laid out. Let me just check this up here. Yeah, everything looks pretty good. Now, I need to figure this out. So let's go ahead and erase one more time. And let's just kind of problem solve. We'll do it together. Imagine you were the one drawing this sketch. So we have one shoulder here, right? We have a leg kind of coming forward. We have a leg going backward. Now this lower leg is going backward as well. And then his chest goes here. So these are the problems I'm trying to solve on a daily basis. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a little bit more of this bicep than I really wanted to initially. That's okay. And then I'm still going to keep this arm going downwards like this. And then I'll draw, I was thinking that if I draw a clenched fist, I think it might work. Let's try. So what I'm doing now in my mind is I'm kind of sizing out how large I want the hand. You're always trying to figure out what proportions work best. And I'm also keeping in mind that I'm not going to use too much detail here because, like I said earlier, a lot of this arm is going to be shaded in. Okay. So now I'm going to jump over this to this arm, and I'm going to take 3 dots, right? Each dot is going to represent where a claw is coming out. And then I'm just going to draw in, pencil in a claw for each one of these little outlets. And I can come back later with this ruler and I can fix everything and make it look really nice. Don't worry about that. Right now, what I'm trying to do is make sure I have my anatomy where I want it. It looks fine. So now I'm going to dive in and start doing some details. What that means is I'm basically going to darken up the lines. I'm going to do some shading. And, well, just watch along. You'll see. So I'll first start with his mask. So what I'll do here is I'll outline these wings, I guess is what you would call them. Then I would drop this jawline down, turn it into the chin, drop it down, right? And then from here, so I've just done a basic outline of his mask. Okay, so here is where it gets a little tricky because he has this yellow of the mask showing. And then he has these nostrils which would pop out right here. So at this point, what I would do is just draw in the shape of his skull back here. And I would come back and just start filling in this mask. And since I already said I was going to shade it all in, I'm just going to stick with that plan. Now, if later on I want to make adjustments or erase any of this, I always can. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and color it all in. I think it will make it the mask, kind of stand out a little bit more. I think it works well for the composition. So again, I'm not pressing too hard down on the pencil right now. I'm just trying to get a nice even shade, kind of a very smooth shade here. Just continue on like this. Okay, so we have the mask. Now, how detailed am I going to get? Oh, by the way, we have these nostrils too, which we can shade them in. It's okay. No big deal. And underneath his nose would cast some shadow. So I'll go ahead and shade that in as well. And then for his mouth. Now, when you're drawing other parts of the character's face, you want to keep really mindful of your line weights. So I'm keeping a lot of these lines thin, with the exception of the outside here, where you can see I'm darkening in a little bit, which kind of gives it a little bit more volume. And then underneath here, I'll just do these little, kind of like an arrow representing his gum line. Underneath here, I'm just going to go ahead and give him a bottom lip, and then over here, give him more of that, I forget what this part, the jowl or whatever, underneath his mouth. You can shade underneath it to give it more volume. Okay. There we go. Now, when you're drawing Wolverine, the dude is very, very gnarly. He's very hairy. So he's got a lot of facial hair. And really, when you're drawing him, or when I'm drawing him, I like to make him look very, what's the word? Just kind of messy. Just add some facial hair like this. I don't want him to look too pretty and too clean. I want him to look rugged, unfriendly, just someone that you don't want to mess with. All right, moving on. So we have the face in here, and we can come back and do more details later. So now what I'm going to do is focus on outlining his upper anatomy here. So we got his chest, his pec muscles here, and you don't have to draw every single line. You can leave some room for the imagination. I say this all the time. Now I've gotten some rib cage lines over here. They kind of pull back, and then just keep it going. And what I'll do here is this whole area will be all in black as well, because I'm imagining that the light is coming from his upper left shoulder, going this way. So with that said, what I'll do is just kind of keep in mind that I'm going to be shading all this in. And it doesn't look so pretty in the beginning, but as you progress, it gets better. All right. So now let's go ahead and draw in his shoulder pad. I don't know what this element serves. I don't know if he's trying to protect his shoulders or if it's, you know, it is iconic, right? It does kind of identify Wolverine. I mean, as soon as you see the shoulder pads, you know who it is. Okay. So as you can see, I'm keeping the basic outline very, very clean because I know that I can come back in here and add some details, which I will. So I'm just trying to find the shapes of everything. Imagining that his elbow is here. And there you go, right? Now, if I wanted to kind of test this theory, I can go ahead and shade this in, kind of like what I did with the mask. If you want to get really ballsy, you can, I'm using a 2H lead here. It's really, really light. You can actually use a darker lead. You can go, you know, HB or even darker if you wanted to. Some people are comfortable with, you know, B leads or, you know, and that's fine. But for me, there's something about the 2H or the F or even the H that I really like. It can be difficult sometimes to get the lines that you're trying to draw, but it's also, you know, if you do it right, it just looks so clean. Okay. Again, here I am talking while I'm drawing. Just to give you an idea, when I'm sketching, I just have music playing and I get into the zone, and you know, nothing stops me. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some shadow underneath his shoulder, like this. So again, shade this in. And then I'm just going to connect this here, add more, and then even here, just keep that shadow going. Just imagining that since the light's here, anything that's kind of furthest away from that light should be shadowed. Even here on the shoulder pad, since it's, you know, not in direct light, I'm just going to add some shadow. And all this does is it brings out, it kind of creates the 3 dimensions that we're looking for. You know, when you're adding values and shadows to your art, it really makes it pop. Okay, so I'm actually going to go even further like this. And if you find that you've over-rendered or you've gone too far, it's not a big deal. You can come back and erase. So how does that look? Decent. Now, when you're thinking about the arm muscles, right? You have this arm muscle that kind of bulges out here. So I'm going to go ahead and shade that in. And then let's see, what else can I do? Now, of course, when we're really working on these details, I'm going to do some cross-hatching and stuff like that too. You know what? I'll even cast a little bit of a shadow here, just to kind of sell it a little bit more. All right, boom. enough. So Wolverine is kind of a thick, stout character, right? He's not lean by any means. Although in the movies, Hugh Jackman, has been pretty darn lean. Wolverine in the comics is not very lean. He's very short and stout, but he's very tough. Not someone you want to mess with. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and work on this other side here. So I'm imagining that this is his shoulder pad. And then this is his shoulder. Now this arm is further away from us, so I'm not really diving into the details. What I'm going to do is imagine that, okay, we have a bicep, right? Then we have the forearm connects to the bicep. We have this wrist. And I'm just paying attention to shapes. Now I'm pulling this, if you can see, whoops, I don't like when these little black marks show up here. When the lead kind of falls apart from your pencil, you get like these little black dots, and then they can really mess up your art, because if you try to erase later or you shade, it smears and it's almost impossible to remove. Okay, so I'm imagining that this is his arm pulled back, and what I'll do is I'll draw kind of a highlight like this. And then everything inside of this will be shaded in black. And then this will be the shape of his hand, and then he'll have these shadows of claws coming out. So it'll give it a little effect like his arm is pulled back further away. Now, since we're keeping with the theme of the light being up here, we're casting shadows. So this would be, if you don't want to make this black, I'll show you what we can do. If you want to just kind of give it some tone, we can. Because he's got these elements of his costume, like, let's say right around here. He's got these stripes, right? And they kind of fall mid-chest. And then we got to give him some neck muscles. If a character doesn't look like he's straining, then you haven't done your job. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give him a little bit of details over here. Let's see. I don't want to go too much into the top of the mask yet. Now, this is his trap, right? And you want to give it some shadow. And right here is his collarbone. Collarbone connects to his shoulder. It's also the bone that connects to the pec muscle. The collarbone can move up and down. It swivels, kind of like your shoulders can move up and down. So you can keep that in mind when you're drawing. I'm also going to cast a little bit of shadow here, showing that these pec muscles are popping out, right? Creating some volume here. Like I said, please forgive my pauses when I'm talking and trying to draw. It's tougher than you might think. Okay. So now what we'll do is, let's imagine, let's see. If the light was up here in the upper corner, let me look at my camera here, make sure everything's looking good. Okay. So if the light is up here, right, that means that this part of the trap would be shaded in. perhaps underneath his chin, let's say like this. Just give him a casted shadow. Over here, all this is going to be shadowed. What else? Heck, I'll give him some shadow here. I'm just going to go ahead and shade in this area. You see? Right here. Erase that when it happens. Because if you let it go, it's going to ruin your sketch later. It's going to stand out. Especially when you scan it. It's so annoying. Take it from me. Alright, so we got that shaded in. And I'm just going to go ahead and shade in all of this arm that I've got kind of worked out here. Just get out ahead of it. Shade in as much as you can. And if we want to change something later, we have an eraser. Alright, so now we can kind of see if this looks right. It looks pretty decent, right? And let's go ahead and strengthen up the lines here of this belt. So I'm just going to give them a basic X, and then here's the rest of the belt wrapping around. Now, some of this upper body is kind of protruding over the belt because, again, like I said earlier, we have the character leaning forward. And so when you're drawing, when you're trying to make this, when you're trying to sell this, I should say, you got to remember your line of action, which would be like this. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a bunch of lines like this. And see how it looks. Okay, it looks fine. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to crisscross. So this is kind of a crosshatch. I'm going to be darker at the top here underneath his rib cage. And then as I get closer to the belt, I'm going to lighten up. And then what I'm going to do to really sell it is pull back some shades this way. And then maybe even over here. Draw some lines towards the light. And then to really make it bounce, you have your shadows covering here, but then they're going to reflect this way too, right? So what I would do at this point is just draw some diagonal lines. And then as we get over here, I'm just going to spread them a little bit further apart and lighten them up a little bit. And then I'm just going to go back over here and crisscross just to add more tone. You can do that here too, but just don't do too much because we're closer to the light. And then what I'll do is I will create a X within this belt buckle here. This is easy because all you're doing is shading it in. So I'll shade it in like this, a solid black. So if you were inking this, this part would be solid black underneath and underneath. So we have kind of a rectangular shape, right? Now, you can add some arbitrary lines like this just for giggles and style. Okay, so from here, what I would do is just take from this corner, draw a line straight to that corner, and vice versa. From this corner, I would draw a line to the other corner, right? So now we know that his X is right here. And so all we want to do at this point is we have a couple options. We can draw a triangle here, and then an equal triangle here. And then the same thing over here, triangle, right? And that just, our other option would have been just to thicken up these two lines that were crisscrossing. Either way is perfectly fine, as long as the outcome is the same. So then I'll even take this ruler just to make sure my lines are in the right spot here. And I think it's important for you to use a ruler. I mean, just like reference, I mean, you want to make your art look as believable as possible, even though we're drawing cartoons. It just, you know, when something stands out because it's wrong, it just ruins the fun for the viewer, for the audience of your art. And I've been the culprit of that. I've done things and I've guessed, and it doesn't turn out the way it should. And people can see it. I can see it. Okay, so we have his belt under here. And then what I'm going to do now is, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and do some cross hatching. So since the light is up here again, I'm just going to draw some lines kind of upward like this, kind of curving along the same shape as the shoulder pad. And then I'm just going to do the same thing this way. But as we get closer, I'm just going to spread them a little bit further apart. And then same thing with this shoulder. So you see that the arm's kind of spherical, right? So just draw like this. And then come back. And then draw up this way. And all you're doing is just creating some value. And it adds value to your art. Same thing here. You can even go this way. So we have this shadow casted from the shoulder. And then you can take this and you can just curve it up this way. And if you really want to add some more shadow here, you can. Nothing's stopping you. Just don't overdo it and don't underdo it. Know why you're doing things, right? When you're drawing a line, make sure that every line is accountable for something. You hold every single line that you draw accountable. There's got to be a reason for it. And I don't mean every single line. I mean, there's going to be some arbitrary scribbles here and there, and that's fine. But for the most part, you have to have a purpose behind all of your sketching. Okay, so how's that look so far? Is it getting there? Okay, so it looks like it's solidifying, right? Looks like it's coming into a solid form. Now, from the shoulder, I could draw some lines like this. It's not necessary, honestly. But it's fine. As long as it doesn't ruin anything. Okay, and then from this one here where the trap we shaded in, I'm just going to... Now, some artists, and I used to do this too, when you're doing your cross-hatching, you can get really fancy with it, and you can do like a thick line and then kind of a teardrop and work your way up. That's perfectly fine. But I'm telling you, like, if you are drawing on the crunch and you have deadlines and other tasks that you have to do, you don't need to do stuff like that. Just get your message across, get your point across, and leave it at that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and imagine that this is his stripe. I'm going to shade it in over here. Shade in here a little bit. I'm going to leave some of it light. And then really this line here is bothering me. So I want to kind of make this chest look a little bit more developed. So what I'll do is just create some curved lines, and then those lines would cast shadow. And then just draw some more cross-hatching this way. And you can go up this way. You don't have to cross-hatch, you can just leave one line if you want to. It's up to you. And then you can add some more lines this way. And what we're trying to do is just give it some more volume, some more depth. Because what you're trying to do, and believe it or not, you're a salesman or saleswoman, you are selling your art to the viewer. You are making them believe that this is real. Even though they know it's not real, it's just a sketch. You want them to forget that for a moment. You want them to kind of get lost in the details, lost in the magic that you've created. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep drawing some lines over here. And I'm just doing this because I'm trying to sell that the light is behind here, protruding this way, or shining this way. Okay, now I know this is a long video. I think we're already on, wow, 45 minutes. I might have to make some adjustments, edit some things out. Or maybe I just leave it long for you guys, and some of you will watch it and some of you won't. The ones that watch it are the ones who really want to learn, and the ones who don't, well, they just don't have patience, because look at today's attention span. I'm telling you, like, if I had YouTube when I was a kid just learning to draw, I would have just watched every single day. I would have watched regular TV. I would have just learned from whoever was teaching, as long as there's someone that I took interest in. Because now we have so many resources. It's insane. Like, literally, it's insane. Okay. So now I'm just going to curve these lines up this way. And go this way, counter them. I'm going to add a little shadow here to really make his neck pop out. You want to add some shadows and just make it look like there's some striations and strain going on here. Okay, maybe I'll do a part 1 and a part 2. How about that? And this could be the conclusion of part 1, because I don't want to take up too much of your time. I do feel a little bit guilty. Not that guilty, to be honest, because hey, I'm putting in the time. Why can't you? All right. So what we're doing now is we're just finding the muscles. And we want to make it look as though his arm is flexed, right? We want him to have really strong forearms. He's got these claws that are going to be, coming out of his I'm going to do old school. So I'm going to draw, they're going to be coming out of the top of his hands. Not like the movie where it comes out of his finger. It's going to come out up here. And then from over here, we're going to do the same. So what I'll do is I'll look at my hand. I'll say, okay, I like this shape. Imagine a thumb here. And you can see that I'm not really paying too much attention to the details of this hand because it's all going to be shaded in. What we want is a silhouette, and we want that silhouette to look believable. So with that said, let's go ahead and shade all this in. And let's see. We'll see how it looks. I'll turn around, see if it works. And then let's go ahead and create some claws coming out. And one thing you can do to sell this is just draw some hairs coming off his arm and his shoulder. Boom. I think that works. All right, and then I'll do the same thing here. I'll probably sharpen my pencil and come back and add some hair. You know, when you're drawing, you're always adding textures and all that good stuff. The details are the fun part. So with these muscles here, what you want to try and do is make them look volumized again. So we're constantly doing that. It's always a challenge, right? We're always trying to make our limbs and our arms look believable, make them look strong. So since again the light is coming over, what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to draw like that. I'm going to shade this. I'm just going to see how this looks. Now I'm just going to go ahead and give a lot of shadow over on this side because it's furthest away from the light. And I'm going to do the same thing, just a little bit of cross hatching here. So we're thinking of where is the muscle coming. So I'm just going to go like this, curve towards the light on both of these. And then I'm just going to come back and do some counter lines here. Just cross over. Now I'm debating if I want to do this area here. I think I could. It's a tough one though, because I don't want to cover up too much. Let's see. If I don't like it, I can come back and change it. All right, I think what I'm gonna do is stop here because we're really approaching an hour, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, honestly. What I would do here is I would just kind of draw these shadow lines coming upwards like this. Same thing over here. And then I would just go across them this way just to create more volume, and just keep doing that over and over. Now with this, I'm looking at this arm and I'm thinking, since it's really away from the light, I do want these claws to kind of be a metal sheen, right? And then I'll show you what I'm saying. So I want these claws to show because these are shadowed in. So I don't want to shadow these in. I want to kind of make them look like they're metallic. And one of the ways to really sell that would be to kind of shade all this in over here. And if I don't like it, I can come back and fix it. Which I might. I'm kind of not liking it already, but I just wanted to experiment. No problem. So I'll probably come back here and erase some lines like this. I would just erase a few of these. And just kind of create more musculature. And you'll have to experiment with all this, right? You have to see what works and what doesn't work. Okay, so then here, what I would do is just try and keep these all kind of balanced. I really want them to pop out. So then you come back here and you can kind of look at the arm, make sure the hand looks decent. Doesn't have to look perfect. But then draw some knuckles underneath here. Shade them in. Make this thumb pop out a little bit. And really make these, I don't know what you would call these, outlets for the claws. Show that they're there. Make sure that your viewer can see them. Darken in these claws a little bit. Oops, keep going. And then do the tops. It can get very confusing because you have so many different parallel lines. You just gotta be very mindful of what you're drawing. Now you can draw these little kind of rings. To make them pop out a little bit more. And from here, what I would do, because I'm going to stop, is I would just continue the same pattern, right? I would just come down here, find my shadows, right? Shade it in, find my leg anatomy. Remember that this whole leg underneath is probably going to be shaded in, and he has these like wings that would pop out. Same thing here. draw in these wings. And then you could draw in some shadows here, shade all this in. And there we go. And then what you'd want to do is just come back and re-outline the outside lines. You want to thicken up your line weights, make them pop out. And if you want to add more details to the face, you can. Just be very careful, because you can go too far. So be very confident when you're drawing faces. If you're not really good at drawing faces, keep it very simple until you take my How to Draw Faces course, which is coming out soon. If you've taken my anatomy course, I do touch on drawing the head and the face, but I'm developing a course that's really diving into that. So you could come here and draw kind of a highlight and just kind of draw some lines like this to make it pop out. And if you've seen in the 90s, what they would do is just draw these little lines here, and that would just indicate that, you know, the light source was behind. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop now, let you guys go back to your normal lives. For those who have stuck around and watched this whole video, I really appreciate it. Hit me up if you watched this whole video, really, because I might quiz you. And on my next course, I might be able to hook you up with a discount. So hit me up and let me know that you watched this. And this is a secret, and only those who have gotten this far would know. I'm not mentioning it anywhere other than here. All right, there we go. So I'm going to put my pencils down, my erasers down, boom. And thank you. I hope you enjoyed, and I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to like, follow, comment, subscribe, whatever it might be. Follow me on Instagram. I have 2 accounts, Van Orden Art and Comic Art Mastery. So Comic Art Mastery is more for students, because I'm really going to start loading up on templates and how to tutorials there. And then my personal art page is at Van Orden Art. So check that out. Subscribe, comment. If you guys want me to draw something in the future, let me know what you need help with the most. And if you do take courses and stuff like that, I really like when my students communicate with me. Let me know what you're trying to draw, what you're trying to learn, and I would be happy to help you. All right, guys, take care. Happy New Year, and I will see you in the next one.